webinar on excelling in a global multicultural environment. I welcome you all for this webinar session, which may provide you a long insight, a depth insight into the global challenges and how to face these challenges and how we can be able to excel and how we can be able to design the business strategies to cope up with the international, cross-cultural and other environmental pressures. Myself, Dr. Manoranjan Pira, Director Academics of School Group, welcomes you all to this session. Let us understand the culture. What is culture? Culture of a society is comprised of shared values, understandings, assumptions, and goals that are learned from early generations, imposed by present members, and passed on to succeeding generations. Understanding culture is a primary step in globalization. The step to understand our own culture, ethnocentrism, parochialism, and develop a strong cultural sensitivity with that base. With so many organizations operating in a multicultural environment today, it is easy to assume that the increasing connection among countries and the globalization of corporations would result in cultural differences disappearing or diminishing. Yet, on the contrary, as the economic borders come down, cultural barriers often go up, thus presenting new challenges and opportunities in global business. There are some universal leadership principles that have been identified as being very effective when employed specifically in a multicultural environment. Interestingly enough, these are all biblical principles that global business inadvertently used to achieve success. Based on the various business research in this regard, effective leadership in a multicultural environment can be achieved by employing three fundamental primary leadership styles, stated as vision, mobilizing people towards change, serving by building emotional bonds, leading others to greatness by developing people for future responsibility. These principles have been described as climate drivers that have the most positive impact on an organization. Leaders in a multicultural environment must in addition, recognize the limitations of one's own cultural norms. Leaders will have their most positive influence if they have a willingness to recognize the limitations of their own cultural norms and accept and adapt to the culture of the host country. Today, we are having our guest with us, Mr. Hitesh Bajaj, Service Delivery Head of Asia Pacific, HP, Hewlett Packard. Let me introduce him with his brief profile. Mr. Hitesh Bajaj, who is basically an engineer from University of Mumbai and Masters in Business Administration from Texas A&M University, USA. He is currently associated with HP, Hewlett Packard, as Service Delivery Head for Asia Pacific. To his credit, launched IT telecom services in South Korea, Japan, Australia, Hong Kong and Taiwan. Value added with a living and worked in US for around 5 years, which has given him a very wide exposure into the cross-cultural environment. He further has spoken and as a regular industry speaker at major industry-specific events in the cross-cultural dynamisms. He has conducted various guest lectures at some reputed MBA colleges and various forums and seminars and webinars. So, for today's topic, a man fit into the very much of the cross-cultural part, and let us listen to him about his thoughts and views about this topic. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Hitesh Bajaj and I'm the Service Delivery Head for Asia Pacific region with Hewlett Packard. The topic for today is excelling in a global multicultural environment. So in today's world, a number of us work with people from different countries, different regions, from different culture. So how do we ensure we deliver or give our optimal performance, right, and continue to deliver the key business results? We'll first cover an overview. Next, we will look at some of the key factors with multicultural teams. Right? Then we will review some of the advantages of working globally, and finally, we will go through methodology or approach for improved performance. Now, under this, I have developed a 10-step method. This is based on my experience of over a decade working with people from different countries, region, and I thought it will be good to have a framework or an approach that others can benefit from. So these are the items we will go over today. Overview. We have an economy today that is not only global but also very vibrant and dynamic. Right? So in this kind of environment or setting, it is pretty common for professionals to lead teams, drive programs, launch new products or services in different countries. Right? So if you look at about 20 years ago, this wasn't a very common phenomena where people worked with others from other countries. Right? But in the last 20 years, there has been a wonderful transition from a local view to a global view. And this transition is pretty evident in almost any industry today. If we have customers, suppliers, employees, partners based in different countries, and we have to achieve organizational goals and objectives, it is important that all these stakeholders have a good, consistent view and are in synchronization. Right? So what does that mean? It means these members or these people know and understand where we currently stand and where we have to go. Right? So in essence, they have a view of the organizational goals and objectives. Now, some of these may not have the exact same responsibilities, right? So their responsibilities may vary depending on which team they belong to. But at the end of the day, it is important that everyone in the stakeholder team is aware of where or what the goals and objectives are. Next, geographical landscape and diversity has a number of challenges as well as opportunities, right? And these challenges and opportunities must be reviewed in a holistic manner. Right? So let's say I have an opportunity in a country that I want to further explore. Right? So I'll make sure that this opportunity actually fits into my larger organization goal. Right? Before any implementation or impact study can happen, I'll make sure that the challenge or opportunity is actually fitting into my company strategy, company direction. Right. One size fits all model. Many of us have heard this terminology pretty often, but in a global setting or in a global environment, sometimes different countries may need certain customizations, right? And even though we would want one consistent model to be applied for all the countries, there may be some challenges. Right? So we have to keep in mind that while we encourage consolidation or one model, some countries may have their own specific requirements, and that means we have to come up with the country-specific model for those countries. All right. If we have to launch a new business, product or for service in a new country, that requires that we think beyond the geographical boundaries and think more in global terms, right? So, and this requires that you feel excited, you feel passionate about what you're going to offer in a new country, right? So, make sure you are prepared for that and take up the responsibilities, right? Local country regulations. Now, this is something important. If we have to operate in a new country, right, make sure that all the regulations, you understand what those regulations are, right? Some of them are tax, compliance, legal, regulatory, and labor union. Make sure that you understand the finer details or have some expert study these regulations, and once you study them, understand how and when your implementation may be impacted with some of these, right? So this will make sure that you not only play by the rules but play it safe. Example. As we go through the next few slides, imagine that you are a global product director and you have to form a team and govern implementation in countries such as Australia, Hong Kong, UK, Netherlands, and Brazil. Right? So these are the names of countries that I have picked up randomly to make sure that we cover more than one region. Right? So think of that you are a global product director and you are trying to form a team and govern the implementation for a new product. And keeping this example in mind will help you understand if and what the challenges are and how you can overcome them. Let's look at some of the key factors with multicultural teams. Diverse thought process. Now, this is an exciting portion for me, right? So I get thrilled about this portion. So in my day-to-day job, I work with people from Australia, Japan. I have teams in South Korea, Philippines, and some other countries in Asia. So when we meet in a virtual setting, right, for a particular topic, I see a number of thoughts or ideas coming in. So that helps me build competencies that are needed to deliver as per the requirements. So diverse thought process is important, and make sure that when people from different countries have different thoughts, you respect them, you listen to those ideas and discuss pros and cons, right? This would mean a brainstorming session, or you have some kind of setting where the ideas get discussed at length, and so that's part of team building activity as well, right? Potential language barrier. Now, this is a very real example or a real issue, I would say. You interact with people from countries where English is neither their business language nor their primary or secondary language. So, how do you overcome that barrier? And the next few slides, the optimal approach, I will cover the methods in overcoming this kind of issue. But keep in mind that this kind of issue are common in real world business environment, and you have to acknowledge them. Cultural sensitivity. Now, when you work with people from different countries, you are essentially bringing in multiple culture and trying to work your way by getting everyone aligned. So what may work in your culture, right, may not necessarily work in other culture. So you have to be sensitive to that area and respect the cultural part of your team members or your stakeholders from other countries, and that will help you build a good rapport when you respect each other's cultural sensitivities. Right, local country regulations. Excuse me. We reviewed some of the regulations a couple of slides ago. So make sure that you keep these regulations in mind or have some expert review the regulations as you work on launching a new product or service in a new country. Right. Work councils and labor unions. So this is a topic which I find one of the most important in a global setting. There are a few countries where they have labor unions who have a good amount of say in how the businesses should operate in those countries, right? How should the business have connection with their employees? What are some of the human resource related nitty-gritties? So, again, just like regulations, make sure you have either yourself or some expert review the limitations and opportunities presented by worker council or labor unions. Right. In a global setting, again, this is a portion where sometimes people find it difficult to adjust to, but once you get familiar in this kind of setting, right, you not only get others to perform, but you also increase the productivity. There are rarely any face-to-face interactions or no face-to-face interactions. So what do you do in that kind of environment? Right. So if I have somebody sitting close to me, right, I can walk up to him or her desk and talk the issue face to face. But what do you do when somebody is not physically located, not only in your office but in the country? Right? So be prepared for that kind of virtual setting as well. Time zone difference. As we all know, there are a number of time zones across a number of countries. Right? So let's say you have one person sitting in Australia, somebody sitting in let's say UK, and how do you get both of them together? And add to that, if you have somebody from a third region, let's say Argentina, and all of them want to get together, discuss a topic, have a meeting. Time zone difference can be a little bit challenging, but there are of course some ways to overcome that challenge as well, and we'll go through that in the optimal method slides that I have a few minutes later. Right. In the key factors, we looked at some of the areas that we need to be aware of. There are some real world challenges, but again, there are some positives as well when you work with people in different countries. So we'll look at some of the advantages of working globally. Building competencies, right? If you recall, I mentioned about diverse thought process. Right? When you have people coming together discussing ideas, you understand different perspectives, and that helps you further build up the competencies that are needed for effective delivery of your product or service. Again, different thought process. So that helps in generating new ideas and options. Right? So imagine if you are the only one who was supposed to make any decision. Right? So you review all the options. But imagine if I put in 3 more people and do some kind of brainstorming. Of course, you will be the ultimate decision maker, but if I have more people discussing that topic, right, it helps in getting a very comprehensive picture of what we're trying to deliver. So different ideas and options can be generated through that arrangement, and make sure you value those ideas and options. There may be some agreements or disagreements. That's fine. That's all part of the discussion. But make sure that you respect each other's ideas and options. Right. So if you have a number of countries that you manage or lead, it's possible that what you find working best in one country can also be applied in other countries. So these are called some of the best practices. Sometimes you have to apply customization from one country to another, right? Depending on what kind of requirements they have. But if you have some best practices that work in one country, you have the possibilities of extending those to other countries. Right? So the idea is always think in a holistic manner, right? And always have the big picture in mind. Think global, act local. A number of us have come across this phrase. So what does it mean? Uh, always start with the bigger picture in mind, right? What you are trying to achieve, what your goals and objectives are. At the same time, understand what the local requirements are, right? Because at the end of the day, you will deliver to the local set of people. So understand what the local requirements are, and understand what are some of the best practices, what are some of the good behavior, some of the other positive areas that you can apply in a local setting. Right? For that, you have to think global and act local. Right. One of the other advantages of working globally is you not only enhance your personal but also your professional growth. Right. So when you work with people, right, you always need to be feeling excited, right, of working with somebody who belongs to a different country, different region, different culture, and that helps you build your own personal and professional growth. And there are chances that you may also be interested to learn about some new areas from those countries, right? Could be social, geopolitical, economical, and so on. All right, methodology and approach for optimal performance. So we have looked at some of the challenges, issues, some of the opportunities, some of the good behavior of working in or advantages of working in a global setting. But can we have some kind of a framework, some kind of a approach or a process that will enable us to sail through this kind of a global setting environment? And I've come up with a 10-step approach based on my experience of working with different teams from different countries for a long time. And I think this may be beneficial to our audience. Alright, first, always have the bigger picture in mind. Always start with that, right? So what does that mean? Always have the organizational goals and objectives listed down. Right? So you understand what your organization will achieve at the end of the day and how that fits into your overall corporate strategy or corporate goal. So once you have listed down the organization specific goals and objectives, break them down into country specific. Right? For example, you are trying to launch a service in, let's say, 4 different countries, right, in Asia. So you know that you have to deliver a service end to end in these 4 countries. Right? With that, also have country-specific goals and objectives. Right? So with country A, country B, country C, and country D, list down those goals and objectives. What is it that you want to achieve? Before you start the actual work or the implementation, always know and understand what the country-specific goals and objectives are. Once those are listed down, or you come up with those goals and objectives, cascade them down to different teams and different stakeholders. It could be employees, your suppliers, your customers, your partners, and these may be based in different countries. So, and it's important that these people also understand what the goals and objectives are. If you recall, on my second or third slide, there was a point around getting everyone aligned to the organization goals and objectives. So it's important that everyone has a good, consistent view of where you currently are and where you'll be heading. Third, you try to seek input or feedback from these stakeholders. Right? So, I'm sitting in country A, but I want to implement a service in country B. So I may not be physically present, or I may not be familiar with the local laws, local regulations. So always try and seek input on factors such as feasibility, practicality, and risks from people who are actually based in these countries. That will help you in 2 areas. First, you get everyone aligned, and second, you also get some critical input which probably you may not have thought of initially. And this is important from risk management perspective. So you don't want to be going down the path and then realizing you missed out portion A or B. Right? So it's important you collect all the requirements, take all the input first hand on feasibility, practicality, and any risk. Fourth, gather country-specific requirements. Right? So once you have taken the input that I want to implement solution A, right? And I'm told by the stakeholders that yes, that's feasible, that's practical, and will have very minimal risk. So once I understand the positivity, I get down on collecting some country-specific requirements. Right? So again, there's a fine distinction between point number 3 and 4. 3 means you take more of a informal input from these people to understand whether the solution that you're trying to implement is cost efficient, whether it's feasible and practical. And point number 4, once you make the decision of going down that path, always have country specific requirements collected or gathered. And again, all these stakeholders can have some say in giving you the requirements, right? The requirements are actually originated from business side, but sometimes these stakeholders, your employees, suppliers, customers, partners can provide additional requirements which you can actually do in the scope management portion, right? Step number 5. Once you have gathered the country-specific requirements, you devise a plan or solution that looks into or that covers both global and local requirements. And this is important, right? So many times we come across real-life situations where global requirements are A, local requirements are B. So make sure that you have a solution that takes into account both global and local requirements. That will help avoid any potential conflict of interest. 6. Communicate roles and responsibilities. Now this is important as well. Many times when you have a plan in place, the team that you want to get involved may not be familiar with what your requirements are, what you are trying to implement. So always have transparency through timely communication. And that includes letting the stakeholders know what their specific roles and responsibilities are. Point number 7. Schedule meetings as mutually agreeable to all the parties. Right? So we talked about time zone difference on one of the previous slides. Right? That's a very practical, a real life issue. Right? So you want to get everyone together, but the time zone may be challenging. For example, when I work with people from different countries, I take calls at 11 in the night, 12 in the night. I find it challenging sometimes, but then you work out all the options that is feasible for all the parties. And to add to that, you sometimes may, or sometimes you may also look at on a rotation basis. So if somebody in Australia takes a call at morning of his time, the second time you can do it evening of his time. So that the person on the other side of the world can have a similar flexibility, right? And it doesn't inconvenience all the parties or all the people involved. Right. Point number 8. Once you're through with these meetings, always share minutes of meeting. Right? And one of the advantages is if there are any language barrier that you may have encountered during your meeting, a written communication will always clear those doubts, right? And ensure that what you have discussed in a meeting actually gets noted down, and all the parties get the view of what was discussed, right? That promotes transparency and removes any language barrier. Point number 9 and point number 10. Now, this point number 9 covers around communication. Many times, I come across situations where you are trying to launch the service in countries where English is not their business language or not their primary or secondary language. So, what do you do? One of the ways is you have a very effective communication plan, which may include communicating in both English as well as the local language. Now, This may not apply to your day-to-day email communication, but only during major announcements, such as you're trying to launch a product, launch a service in a new country. The advantages are the local audience also understands what you're trying to convey. Right? If you send something out in one language which may not be perceived well or may not be understood by the parties, you're not effectively communicating. So you could also look at including language which your local audience can understand. And it may not be that easy, but you also have options of a professional translation company, right, that can provide resources who could do the translation. If I could give an example here, recently I worked on a project for South Korea, right, and based on all the feedback and input I received from my local teams, I worked with my communications team, and we came up with a communication plan, right, to include all the key points in a very specific format. And we communicated in both English and the South Korean language. So it helped the local audience understand what we are trying to communicate with them. The 10th and the last point, respect cultural sensitivities. So like I said, what may be culturally accepted for you may not be accepted in other cultures. So always be respectful of others' culture. Be sensitive to what they like, what they don't. You don't have to get to very finer details, but from a business behavior perspective, right, understand what are some of the do's and don'ts, and you understand those sensitivities that helps in effective team building at the end of the day. So these are the 10-step approach. Again, these are important. Each of them, I believe, have finer meaning attached to it. So understanding these points can help you navigate your way through people of different countries, different regions, or different culture. Right. So I would like to thank you for inviting me, for having me here for this brief discussion. It was a pleasure interacting. I hope that these points you find them useful, and I feel glad about sharing my experiences with you through this discussion. So thank you. So with the end of this presentation, I would now like to open the floor for any questions if any of you would like to ask me. So, yeah, all right.
Should there be a physical presence of your team in the country in which you are trying to launch new product or service?
Right. So that's a good question. So it's advisable that you have a team in the country in which you're trying to operate your business. Right? It helps on multiple factors, but at the same time, if you have constraint on resources, it's possible that you may use your team only for the time of launch or initial setup. Once you move towards the BAU, the business as usual phase, you can then look at centralizing your operations. For example, your team based in country A looks after operations in country B, C, and D. Right? That's possible too. But of course, a physical presence always helps. But if you can have an arrangement of centralization, then that would work as well. So, thank you.
How do you address the problem of conflict in local country policy versus global policy?
Right. Yeah, you do come across situations where you have to review both local policy and global policy, and you have a condition where global policy says A and local policy says B. So how do you bridge that gap? Right? It's not easy, but again, it's not difficult as well, or not impossible. Which means you review all the options and devise a solution that takes into account your local requirements. At the same time, it's aligned with your global policy. So think of global policy as an umbrella, and the solution that you are trying to implement takes into account the local requirements on priority as well.
Should team members take courses to learn new languages?
Alright, yeah. I think it may be useful, but again, it's not mandatory. Your team members need not necessarily take courses on new languages. Right? You have ready-to-use tools such as online translators. You have professional translation companies that you can get resources for your translation work. But having your employees go through mandatory training programs, I think that may not be required. Again, if you want to invest in the development of your employees, right, then yes, that kind of training might be helpful. But it depends on your project impact and any risk that may arise.
Are the 10 steps shared for optimal performance industry specific, or can they be applied to any industry?
Yeah, so the 10 steps that I discussed are not applicable for just one industry. It can be applied to any industry. The idea here is to understand what are some of the good or best practices and how do you go about implementing them. Right? So these are not necessarily any industry specific and can be applied to any industry. Hope that answers.
It's great, Mr. Bajaj. Thanks a lot. I express my sincere thanks to our guest today, Mr. Hitesh Bajaj, for contributing his valuable time with our online students, discussing various instances of Asia-Pacific business challenges in a multicultural environment. It is an enlightenment and sparkling thoughts which trigger our intellectual minds to think further about the challenges in the global multicultural environment. And I am thankful to all online students, technical and academic team for their valuable contribution to make this webinar a grand success. Thanks all. Meet you all in our next webinar series. Thank you. So I hope you all must have enjoyed a lot, and we had with us a great personality, Mr. Hitesh. So I feel proud to honor him with Goddess Saraswati's blessings and wishes. So thanks a lot for you to please come over here and deliver this. Thank you.